Abby, would you like to share the screen?
Yes, I just thought about that as well. So give me a moment. Joy, can you see this? Okay.
Perfect, thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We'll probably wait for a few more minutes for people to join us. In the meantime, please feel free to introduce yourself. Oh, I'm not sure if is it disabled?
I think it is. It says, at least I can message to everyone. I hope everyone can message to us.
I don't think the attendees could message. Chat is disabled.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see.
Well, perhaps if everyone gets a chance, you can just put in your name what organization you're with so we can get a sense of who's in the room. That'd be great. If that's possible.
No, it's because this one is a webinar. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think they will just have the privilege to look at our faces. I'm afraid.
Oh yeah, I know. I see I see the names, but I don't see the organizations. That's why I was curious, but no worries.
Okay, maybe one more minute and then we can start because we want to be mindful of everyone's time. Okay, I think we can get started. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. So welcome to today's webinar, where we're excited to launch our latest report, A Decade of Learnings on Gender Lens Acceleration, Case Studies from Asia. And thank you for joining us as we delve into this very important topic. But we would like to inform you that the report is still undergoing the final adjustments and has not yet been published on the website. We will share the link with all the participants via email before the end of the year. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause, but we assure you that this does not hinder us from engaging in a meaningful conversation today about the gender lens acceleration. Before we begin, please allow me to introduce Andy, or the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. And it's a global network of organizations dedicated to supporting small and growing businesses, which we see as vital to engines of job creations, economic growth, and social and environmental impact in developing economies. Our mission is to enhance our members' capacity to build stronger entrepreneurs and drive higher growth ventures. Through this, we aim to cultivate a community of best practices while strengthening the entrepreneurial ecosystem by fostering collaborative partnerships, networking, research convenings, training, and advocacy. So at the core of Andy's work, which is, Andy's work is commitment to inclusive development with a strong focus on entrepreneurship. One of the key priorities is addressing the barriers faced by women entrepreneurs and improving the effectiveness of the business development services programs and designed to support women-led businesses. So this dedication has led us to collaborate with the Sasakaba Peace Foundation, who is a leader in advancing gender equity across Asia. Together, we investigated gender lens practices in acceleration programs, drawing on real-world case studies to highlight innovative strategies and actionable insights on building a more equitable entrepreneurial ecosystem. So in today's session, we will explore the findings from this report and then hear about experiences of successful gender lens acceleration programs. Now I would like to hand the floor to Ayaka Matsuno, Director of the Social and Innovation Program at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, whose invaluable support made this research possible, to share more about their impactful work on gender. Please, Ayaka-san.
Thank you very much, Joy. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Ayaka Matsuno from Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us for this session. I just wanted to talk about our history with Andy and also the work that we have been supporting to make entrepreneurship ecosystem more gender friendly. So back in 2019, we actually launched our milestone toolkit called GLEAR Toolkit, Gender Lens Acceleration and GLEAR Toolkit, Incubation and Acceleration Toolkit. And that was actually launched at the event of Andy in headquarters, Washington, D.C. And then that really triggered a lot of interest on gender lens acceleration, how to really make your organization as well as your program and also the wider ecosystem to make it more gender smart. So that toolkit became like a go-to toolkit for all of the entrepreneurship support organizations. So we always believe that gender equality is really key to achieve sustainable and inclusive development for all of us. So that's why we really want to make entrepreneurship more gender smart and friendly. And back in 2020, when GALI, Global Accelerator Learning Initiative, showed that the findings that actually a clear pattern of all women team benefiting much less from acceleration program compared to the male counterparts. And that was a intriguing question and questionable statement for us to act. If those women entrepreneurs are spending time and efforts to go through acceleration, why not? They could achieve not as much as result, if it's not more, compared to male counterparts. So we wanted to take that as a challenge, and we wanted to create a more gender smart acceleration program. And then in Myanmar, we created Santit Accelerator Program together with EME, Emerging Market Entrepreneurs. Today you will be hearing from Laun. He is from EME. And we also work with Village Capital. So what we did in Santit, we created this module of gender smart acceleration program, basically starting from the design, recruitment, implementation, and all the process of the acceleration program. We apply a gender lens, and how to do that, and then how successful it is. We wanted to capture that. So that's why we decided to go for this case study report. So that the Santit turned into Chennai Accelerator Program in Cambodia. So now we are operating Chennai Accelerator Program in Cambodia with the same model. So you'll be learning about that in this report of Decade of Learning on Gender Lens Acceleration. So the first cohort of Chennai Accelerator Program, we successfully pulled the applicant pool of 54% women, which is significantly more than the market average in Cambodia. And then whenever we progress the accelerator program, we realize that, by their performance and dedication, the last finalists are all women. So we wanted to really show that if we apply a gender lens, starting from the design of the program and then throughout the implementation, we could successfully attract women entrepreneurs as well as male entrepreneurs, so that we can provide the level playing field for both genders. And then we approached Andy, and we have been doing that for the last 4 years already. And then we could really see that very good success, especially the first year of Chennai Accelerator program. So the finalists, four women entrepreneurs, and then 3 out of 4 have secured investments from outside or at the later stage of discussion to get the investment from outside. So we consider it a very good success. And then their program or their business is growing steadily. And then you will be hearing from Raun about this a little bit more. So the decade of learning on gender lens acceleration report capture not only Chennai Accelerator program, but then other 2 examples. And basically, we wanted to really show that if the entrepreneur ecosystem builder has the gender lens from the start, intentionally applying gender lens, you could actually make a difference at the performance of the program. So I am hoping that through this report, you will be learning from our lessons and how to really make ecosystem more gender smart. And I hope that you will enjoy the session today. And I would like to conclude my remark. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ayaka-san. So next, I'm pleased to introduce Abigail Davidson, or our beloved Abby, Andy's Director of Research and Impact, who will present the key findings from this research project. And following her presentation, we will transition into a panel discussion. Over to you, Abby.
Sounds great. How's my audio? Am I loud enough, Joy? My Zoom always gives me trouble. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm going to try to make this really interesting and meaty so that it's a good use of your time. So I look forward to the discussion and also the Q&A. So as you have questions, please include it in I guess there's a Q&A feature, or maybe it's just the chat, Joy.
It's a Q&A, so please use the Q&A button to
I do see
submit
the Q&A.
questions.
Okay, great,
Yes.
great. Yes, please do include your questions to keep it interesting. Okay, so I'm going to take us on a little bit of a journey backwards, hence why this report is called A Decade of Learnings. I want to talk briefly about the Global Accelerator Learning Initiative. Some of you may not have heard of this. Some of you may be like, I've seen this presentation so many times, but I'm going to try to pull out some key insights that sort of set the foundation for why we thought this research was important. So let's start at the very beginning and talk about what is an accelerator, right? Because this term gets thrown around all the time. Like every university, every fellowship, different organizations have an accelerator, and that's fine. The term is used very broadly, but I want to be specific in what we are talking about. We are talking about accelerators as a form of business development support that really gained popularity about coming up on 15, 20 years ago. But it is different than the longer standing incubator model in that it is time limited. It typically has a specific start and end date, anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, maybe even up to a year. And it works with cohorts or classes of entrepreneurs rather than on a rolling admission. And that's very important because it puts some sort of pressure for performance and growth in that short time period with your cohort members. So there's a lot of peer engagement. And then last, there is an emphasis on accelerating growth, right? Hence the name, which typically comes in the form of seeking to connect entrepreneurs with outside investment. And I find that this visual is helpful. It's actually research done by Nesta, which has been a great pioneer in this research. But it's I think the important part is there's a lot of overlap, but those three pieces that I mentioned are what sets accelerators apart. So with this model becoming much more popular in, between like 2005 and 2010, we started to see more organizations starting accelerator programs, particularly in developing economies. There's a big question of, especially among the donor community, of is this effective? And we want to understand not only is acceleration effective, but what are the best practices so that we can direct support to the accelerators that are having the greatest effect. So Andy partnered with Emory University to run the Global Accelerator Learning Initiative between 2015 and 2021. Data collection started around 2013, actually, before the project formalized, hence the decade of learnings. But essentially, this was a massive effort to collect data from entrepreneurs that were applying to accelerators around the world. And I won't get into the methodology here. There's lots of reports you can read, but essentially it resulted in a publicly available data set of more than 23,000 entrepreneurs that applied to more than 200 accelerators worldwide. Many research reports, including I think over 15 academic publications now, which is a very big deal, and a benchmarking tool for accelerators, among many other resources. So I put the website here. So what did we learn from all of this time and all of this data that we collected? We learned a lot, but the three things that I think are most important to share here are that accelerators are effective on average, right? So when we look at how accelerated ventures are performing in terms of revenue growth, increase in number of jobs created, investment growth, et cetera, we are seeing that accelerators are having an impact on these early stage ventures. However, program quality varies significantly. So one of our measures to look at impact was looking at how the accelerated ventures performed compared to those that applied but didn't participate in a program for one reason or another. And in some cases, the ventures that participated in an accelerator actually performed more poorly than those that were not accepted into a program or did not participate, right? So that tells us like that's not a good result for accelerator programs. So that said, there's so much variability. It's really important to know what the best practices are. And then most relevant for this conversation today is that acceleration does not close gender gaps. If anything, it oftentimes exacerbates them. And the graphs that I have here are actually from a study by Village Capital. We find IFC, which utilized Galley data to understand Village Capital's well, I think actually it was the broader Galley data set, if I remember correctly, but they're looking at for men versus women entrepreneurs that go through an accelerator program. That first point you see on the left is pre-acceleration, and then the one on the right is post-acceleration. And you can see that not only are men performing better when it comes to outside investment when they are first accepted into an accelerator program, but they outpace the growth of the women. So even though if you look at the women alone, you see, oh, there's an increase, right? In their investment secured, but what you're missing is that the increase is significantly less than the men who are participating in accelerators. So there's a lot we could ask about that and what's causing that. I mean, I think there's some easy assumptions and that just the inequalities that exist in the landscape of trying to receive investment and connect with those networks and find those open doors is just still present in even when a venture is participating in an accelerator. But there's much more to uncover. This was very an important research study, which I link below. So the good news is that in the past 10 years or so, there's been a lot of new guidance and research on how to run a gender equitable accelerator program. So I linked just 3 here, but I'm sure that there's many more, and happy to hear that in the Q&A if anyone would like to share other examples. But I think the question then for us is, okay, this guidance is available, but is it actually translating into impact? And sorry, hold on one moment. Okay, the joys of doing the webinar at night is that my cats request in and out of my office. Apologies. So essentially what we did with this report is we looked at some case study of programs that have had successful outcomes for women entrepreneurs. We looked at the literature, which most of it hopefully was already in my head after all these years of research. And then we synthesized all this, right? Pulling in what does the existing research say on gender lens acceleration, and then what did we learn from these case studies, and then what are the recommendations based on both of these pieces of information. And so there are two case studies that we will discuss at length today. But I'm sort of previewing this. I'm going to talk about my conclusions, and then we will come back to have this panel discussion. But these are the two case studies that we'll talk about today. And I just want to take a moment also and say that I'm so grateful to be having this panel discussion with two men who are championing the case for gender lens acceleration. I think it's absolutely necessary. You guys are great role models, so I'm very, very grateful. Okay, so let me walk through what we found as our key success factors when looking at the literature and looking at these case studies. There's much to be said, but these are the four that I would like to highlight. So the first is a rigorous selection process. Identifying potential is a key value add that accelerators bring to an entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? When there's so many entrepreneurs out there who are seeking support, who are talking about their businesses, it's hard to know which of these have promise, especially hard for investors or potential customers to know. And so when accelerators put that intense time and energy into recruiting and then identifying the most promising entrepreneurs, that is one of the greatest values that they contribute. But I think one thing to note is that these programs, which we'll hear more from them in the panel discussion, is I think it's easy to think we can, go out and create high potential entrepreneurs, but the truth is, in an accelerator program, in this intensive short period of support, it's really important to find those entrepreneurs that are truly ready to scale, right? And that the same goes for women. I think the assumptions oftentimes are that women are not running ventures that are very, scalable. And so that extra effort doesn't go into actually finding those really promising women entrepreneurs and then selecting them into a program. But it is important to know that women are less likely to apply to accelerators than men. So sometimes it does require creative outreach to make sure that women are aware of the program, that they feel that they belong in that program, that they understand the value that it would bring. And then also to understand that selection processes are subject to gender bias. In the Galley data set, we did not see that women are selected into accelerators at a lower rate than men. But that doesn't mean that there's not gender bias at play that could sometimes shut women out, in addition to the fact that my statistics are on average across the whole data set. So some programs may have more gender bias than others, but this can be reduced through a couple different ways. I would say two that come to mind, and we can hear more later, is having objective selection criteria, and then also the incorporation of women into the recruitment and selection process. And so I put some examples here of our two case studies, as well as Village Capital, which all have some great examples of this. I'll just call out so that we don't forget later. Chennai has a startup health checklist survey, which basically everyone who applies to their program, they have this survey where they understand what the needs are of the entrepreneurs. They give the curriculum to the entrepreneurs and say, okay, you need to start learning some of these things where you need to grow. And then they actually measure how much these entrepreneurs are adopting these lessons and changing. And then they select into the full program those that are showing the most receptivity to the lessons, right? I think that's just fascinating. So we'll have to come back to that. I know SeedStars, you have a really careful way to assess what entrepreneurs need at the outset, as well as your internal gender assessment. So the next would be deep expertise and connections among the program staff. The individuals running accelerators are not just administrative personnel, right? They are crucial in determining the success of the program. Those are the folks that need to be so deeply connected in their own ecosystems. They know the investors, they know the corporates, they know whoever the entrepreneurs need to get connected with. They hold those networks. And that's not always the case. A lot of times there are programs that are not locally embedded, they're not locally informed, and those programs are, from my experience, not as effective from what I've researched. And then really specifically, like that, those program staff should reflect what the goals of the program are. So if it's investment readiness, these program staff need to be, have formerly worked for investors. They need to be investors. They need to be connected to investors, whatever it is. I think Chennai is a great example because it was literally started by an investment firm. So who has better experience than that? But then also, it's not just investors, right? You can also leverage relationships with corporates, donor institutions, et cetera, to really elevate entrepreneurs in the way that you are seeking to do. Tailored support and quality mentorship. Andy talks about this so much, so I hope the message has gotten out there already, but classroom learning is not as effective as learning by doing. There is so much research that shows this by now. Not to say that some classroom learning might not be helpful, but the outcomes are nothing compared to that tailored mentorship and support and actually growing your business while you are in the program, applying those lessons and trying and failing and trying again. And so this is also important for women entrepreneurs who oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes have less free time too. Typically care responsibilities do fall more on women than on men. And so it's important to really value their time and make sure that it's not spent just sitting in a classroom because they might not have time to do that, run their program, and live their life. And I just called out this quote because I loved this from the report from a participant in the Chennai program that said, how much the program staff pushed them to make significant changes to their venture. So as they were freshly learning the concepts, they would put them into play right in that moment rather than knowing they would probably put them off and not actually apply those lessons if they weren't forced to do that in the moment. So the last one is this seems so basic, but prioritizing gender equality and celebrating women is not as common as we might think it is. It's one thing to say like, oh, we care about women, but it's another to actually deeply prioritize gender equality. I'm hoping that Tom from SeedStars can talk later about how SeedStars has an entire internal gender assessment where they look at each part of their program and understand where could there be potential bias? How do we mitigate that? I also love that Chennai has a component to their program where they actually, regardless of whether the company is run by men or women or both, they talk about how are you addressing gender equality in your business, right? So it's not just about the accelerator trying to be gender equitable, but they're pushing that mission to the entrepreneurs as well. And then, of course, there's two pieces to this. So impact measurement, it's essential to understand performance. And it's not that hard, but it's not that common either. It's basically just understanding what performance outcomes you're looking for and then tracking that based on gender, right? I was kind of surprised when we were considering who we might feature in the case studies, how many programs actually have not started doing that. And then also integrating women into every aspect of the program. So in the Galley research, we found that when women are included as mentors, selection committee members, et cetera, there are higher rates of participation of women. And I don't think that just speaks to the reduction in any gender bias in the selection process, but it also means when women are serving in all these roles, they're going to bring their networks in, right? They're going to be like, oh, I know an entrepreneur who could be a great fit for this program. And so having women just be in the fold is going to bring in more women as well. So final reflections. And this is my take, as you can see in the top left of the screen. But I've been thinking about this topic for a long time, and I've looked at all of the research, and a few things that I just wanted to say from my own take here is that the best thing that accelerators can do for women is, first of all, be excellent, right? So many of these takeaways I just shared with you aren't really that gendered, right? It's just how do you run a good accelerator program? But hiring those experienced, well-connected, locally embedded program staff, we want to honor the time that women are spending in accelerators by being excellent and making those connections for them. Incorporating women at every step of the process, as we talked about, and then having high expectations for their growth and opening doors accordingly, right? I see many more programs that say, oh, we're trying to help women become investment ready, and we're trying to help them grow their confidence. And I'm not saying that that's not a real challenge that people face. And I really have seen some good examples of that. But at the same time, there's a lot of women who are ready for scale, they're ready for growth, that need to just have those connections made for them. And I think we need to honor that end of the spectrum as well. And two things I would say programs should not do. Like I said, they should not assume that building confidence and investment readiness will automatically result in growth. I've just heard time and again of specifically investment readiness programs that are in an ecosystem where there's not, either they're in an ecosystem where there's not a lot of investment readily available, or they just don't have those connections in the local ecosystem. And so they're assuming, oh, if I put women through these classes and these trainings, like they'll just gain the confidence and they'll go do it themselves and it'll be great. But like, that's not how people learn. And those blockages are still going to be present for women, even if they go through an investment readiness program that is supposed to prepare them. The second is that programs should not necessarily assume that women-only programs are more effective. I'm sure in certain cases those are very effective, but we have to be very careful that if there is a women-only program, that there still are access to male mentors, that they're still given the connections to men in the ecosystem who oftentimes do hold more power. And so we don't want to shut women out of those networks. And then last, what surprised me during this process, like I said, very few programs collect gender disaggregated performance data. It's not hard to do. If anyone wants to call me afterwards, I'll talk you through how to do it. I would love to see more programs that actually are able to answer the question when we ask, how do your women perform compared to your men? Okay, I tried to go through that quickly. I hope you learned something new. But back to this panel discussion. Thank you both for being here. So we have Tom Sebastian, Regional Director for Asia and the Asia Pacific region with SeedStars, and then La Wunyan, who's investment manager for emerging market entrepreneurs, who also runs the Chennai Accelerator in Cambodia. So let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, so could I just ask you both to briefly introduce yourself and your program? And we have 27 minutes, so keep it brief, but would love to just hear your voice, your own introduction to who you are.
Lawan, do you want to go first?
Sure, Tom, thanks. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. My name is Lawan Yan. I'm an investment manager and program manager at EME and Chennai Accelerator. Chennai Accelerator is a gender smart accelerator. We provide mentorship in a tailored, data-driven way, especially to women entrepreneurs and also men entrepreneurs in Cambodia. We started in Myanmar in the same structure for 2 years. We call it Synthesizing Accelerator in Myanmar. Based on the success and all the lessons learned, we expanded into Cambodia, and we, at the moment, finalized the cohort 2 of Chennai Accelerator, with the support of specifically SBF and ADB and other development funding organizations as well. We support around 20 SMEs every cohort, and with a funnel approach, providing grants up to 30,000 for each company if an SME goes through the whole process. We provide mentorship for investment readiness to support these SMEs to be investment ready, at the same time grow their business and grow their gender impacts. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, which part of the world you're in. I'm Tom Sebastian. I'm the Regional Director for Asia and Asia Pacific for SeedStars. Just a quick overview of SeedStars. SeedStars is a global venture capital firm. We've got about 8 funds that we operate with around 300 million to 350 million under assets under management. We invest in startups across emerging markets. So that's one thing that's quite unique about us, is that we invest only in emerging markets. And these are Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, and North Africa, and Asia and Asia Pacific. We've, for a long time, being investors ourselves, we've seen the gap that we need to identify and support high growth companies so that it's just better sense for investment. So we have a programs division, which I work for, that engages with startups across the world and entrepreneurs, men and women. across sectors. And it's in that context that I'm here today to also speak about, because one of the programs that we will talk about today is our Asia Pacific Care Accelerator program, which is under the larger ambit of the Gender Inclusive Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Program, which is supported by Canada's International Development Research Center and also Visa Foundation. But apart from that, SeedStars has always run being led by a woman CEO. We've always believed that supporting women entrepreneurs is key to every ecosystem, especially emerging markets where empowering women has a transformative impact on not just their own families, but also communities as well. So a lot of our programs that we run across the world have a very strong gender bias. Abby, I know you said not to have a gender bias, but we have a gender bias, but it's a very pro-woman gender bias.
Positive gender bias.
A positive gender bias that we have on our programs as well. We've run programs in Africa where we've been supporting 300 women entrepreneurs. And yes, we work across the spectrum and maturity of the different startups. So right from early stage to Series A, Series B companies as well. And while we do work with high growth companies, we treat them all the same. We focus on the company and the potential for it to become a high growth company. And yes, when it is led by women entrepreneurs, all support that's needed to ensure that they're able to raise smart capital, all the barriers that they face while doing so are something that we can try and mitigate. But we'll speak more about that later. We are headquartered in Geneva, and we've got a team across the world as well. But thanks so much for having us over, Abby.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to speak with both of you because you have such impressive programs. So let's start with the question of selection. So not only is this something that emerged in our research, it's something that we've been talking about with the overall Galley research for years. Also, if anyone's seen the Argydius Foundation Scale research recently for best practices for business development support, it's an acronym for these best practices, and S stands for selection. So it's all about making sure that what the accelerator offers matches what the entrepreneur needs. And I think that's so important for women because it's easy just to say, oh, like we have women in our program, but how do you actually find that match? I would love to hear from both of you about that process. So Lawun, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Abby. Yeah, so like you said, we have to be very intentional and purposeful in, the whole selection and even identification process. What we do at Chennai is, we do three things. One is, defining our goal clearly, which is, we want to support and grow gender impact, and while we're supporting the women entrepreneurs. So we make it clear that even in our announcements, contents, and communication, everything that we communicate with the potential entrepreneurs is we make clear that we would like to support women entrepreneurs specifically. And in our branding, we use mascots and logos and all the characters of Chennai. You can see it in my background. For example, this Chennai's mascot is a woman. And we have this, the launch, when we call for applications, we, also do the animations where, the Chennai girl representing Chennai as a concept is, supporting the women entrepreneur across her journey and overcoming all the obstacles. And we also put in call to action at the end of all the contents, saying that, at Chennai, we would specifically like to support women entrepreneur. So if you are a woman and if you have an idea or if you're starting your own business, make sure you apply this program. We would specifically like to support women entrepreneurs. So that kind of, strategizing the content in a way that this program is intentionally built to support women entrepreneurs and to make the women comfortable participating in the program. That's one thing. And also in the, after we receive all the applications, when we get to the selection process, we also make it, structure it to be very data-driven. We don't want to do the pitching when we select the entrepreneurs, because when you do the pitching competitions, men in general used to be louder, take more space and grab more intentions. So we don't want to do this pitching events. So instead of pitching, what we do is like Abby mentioned during the presentation, we have the entrepreneurs take the 100-question long survey when they first got to the Chennai, and then based on the answers on the surveys, we provide them this curriculum. We call it Chennai Resource Hub, which is tailored to what each entrepreneur's need. If they are, for example, if they need more support or if they need to improve in the reporting system or financials, they can read these parts of the curriculum first. And then how we track is they have to provide feedbacks on each of the modules, and they have to, show the evidence how they implement all this knowledge and templates, case studies that they have learned in the Chennai Resource Hub into their businesses. And over a window of 1 month, this application process, all the entrepreneur have to, go through this process, read the materials, take the, the templates and implement these in their business, etc., etc. And at the end of, the reason also how we do this asynchronous approach in the selection process is because women, they cannot just work full-time on the business. Some women entrepreneurs have their, responsibilities at home too. So if you just put everyone in the class and have them, learn all these things in a group basis, some entrepreneurs will not be able to join even the application process. So because of this asynchronous approach, women can, take the, learning, review the curriculum in their own time when they have free time. But at the same time, we also like to select the best entrepreneurs, right? Men or women alike. So we make this whole process challenging enough, flexible enough for the entrepreneurs to study and do in their own time, free time, but at the same time challenging enough that only the best we can select the best at the end of the day. Yeah, so at the end of the application process, we select the ones who put in most effort, who spend most time, and who show the evidence that, they kind of understand the concepts. They show evidence how they implement the materials and learning along the way. And that's how we do the selection process.
So just to add on, Abby, just to add on to that question as well. So how we've worked at SeedStars on this, everything agreed with everything that Lavon said. I think these are excellent insights, and it's something that we also follow. What we try and focus on very keenly is intentionality, right? Very intentional gender targets that we ensure on all the programs we run, which means that we also measure ourselves based on the number of women-led organizations that are going to be part of the final cohorts, the number of applications that we source from women-led enterprises. We look at trying to understand how many women-led investors are going to be part of this the program as well. So we add that intentionality front and center in the measurement, so that at the end of the day we can be held accountable to our intentions of promoting gender enterprises as well, right? That's number one. Number two is when we are trying to source applicants, a lot of the time, and it's the same for men and women. I wouldn't try and kind of bring a gender bias in there. It's the same, where if you see that there is potential successful women entrepreneurs who come and champion a particular program, or say talk about their experiences of how they went through challenges or went through their own situations and were able to become successful entrepreneurs, it encourages a lot more women entrepreneurs within emerging markets to say, it is possible. So a lot of the things that we do, this is called mirroring, and we kind of bring those successful mirrors into the ecosystem. And that's why having an organization like SeedStars that's led by a woman who is constantly voted over the last couple of years, one of the best CEOs in Europe, really helps. Our investees that we've had successes with are also women-led. Bringing those in makes a difference. One of the other things that we also intentionally bring in is in our the selection process, apart from having all your gender metrics that we look at, just like Lavon said, at the end of the day, we're here to select the best business, the business that has the highest potential to succeed. So like Chennai, we don't have a pitching competition much because we observe the same bias that, as you see, men can be louder. And so what we do is we run this as how we would select and invest a potential investee into our fund. We ask for documents. We ask for your business plan. We ask for your growth. We ask to understand your annual recurring revenue. We would like to know if you've raised funding. We'd like to know who your customers are, where how you plan to grow on the business. How would you benefit from coming into the program for SeedStars? So it puts the audience in a seat where they now have to see themselves in a program where they can gain benefit. And that's also a very good way for us to understand what's needed, right? So that we're never going in a one size fits all, and we can develop that. And on our selection committee, there's always women investors who are brought on board, along with men investors as well. And all of them are asked the same question. I mean, amongst a myriad of questions, one question that we constantly ask is, would you invest in this company? And would SeedStars invest in this company if it were to be part of the program, right? We eat what we cook. So the idea, if you're able to believe in the fact that, yes, this enterprise has potential, we would invest, then we would bring them onto the program, along with the positive gender bias that we add in the whole thing. So I think that's how we approach our sourcing processes as well.
I love what you both shared, because you both shared that you have an intentional gender lens, but then you also just run an excellent program and you have high expectations and high standards. Like, I love the marrying of those two, because I think it allows you to truly find just some incredible women entrepreneurs. And also what you said, Tom, about that sort of like cultural role model effect. It's huge. Like, we can't ignore the the existing just like gap in high growth entrepreneurship when you look at gender. And like, so you're also seeing your role not just in supporting the existing women entrepreneurs, but in building a pipeline of future high potential women entrepreneurs. So I love that. Let me pivot a little bit and just ask, can you share any more from your perspective about my finding of just needing those really high quality, well-connected program staff, and also maybe why it has worked well, like with you both being like running an accelerator, but being an investment firm, right? Like, I think that model is also unique to what you both do and super powerful. So can we hear more about that? Tom, let's start with you.
Yeah, so a big part of, so I've come into SeedStars about a year and a half ago. My background comes from working in the government sector, strategy and execution, but also being an entrepreneur myself with a successful exit. And when I came to SeedStars, a curious thing that I heard was SeedStars was built was by for entrepreneurs. And I thought that was a very nice marketing slogan, and I laughed to myself a little bit. But when I did a bit of digging, I did find that over 95% of the staff that we have either been investors or ex-entrepreneurs, many of them failed entrepreneurs. And I think those are the best kind of entrepreneurs, yeah? Because you learn a lot more from the losses that you've had or the mistakes that you've made than the successes that you've had. So that's been one of the key secret sauce that we've ensured that we bring in is the kind of staff we hire on, like you said earlier, Abby, have had experience in the sectors we're looking at, probably the work streams we're looking at. So if we have to hire somebody to support a care program for care enterprises, we look at on ex-entrepreneurs who've run care enterprises or have worked with investors that have invested in the care ecosystem. And so that's something that we very carefully plan and select in the process. And we also, of course, look at ESOs across the world that we look at staff that's worked within them and we bring them on board. But the key aspect, like I said, many of us are entrepreneurs, which means that we don't run this program for the sake of running it. We know it's a matter of life and death for the cohort. These are actual living businesses and not just a metric on an Excel sheet, right? So we need to be aware of that every action we do has a multifold consequential action on their families, their businesses, and their communities. And that's something that we ensure that all our staff understand while working on this.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
added a piece to
definitely.
mention it's not just about the experience of like having the knowledge and the connections. It's also about understanding how important this time is. Because you're right, it's a big sacrifice for the entrepreneurs to give all this time and energy to the program. So I love that. Lavun, what would you be able to add?
Yeah, good points that Tom mentioned. And also for us, let me share a little bit of background of EME. So we started as a VC fund in Myanmar back in 2017, and we invested in like 11 companies in our portfolio. And, our team, we basically invested around like some of the companies will be at idea stage, pilot stage, or some at the product stage, right? Some a little bit in a, mature level than that. So these companies, I think we supported the companies 10 out of 11 to raise additional rounds after they became our portfolio companies. And all the portfolio companies right now are either like break even or profitable right now. So we have this kind of closely connected experience and support system on our portfolio companies. The last time I checked, it was around like 5,000 hours of support that we provided. So that's how we do it, right? So after investment, we support them on each of the company's areas of need, and then we track the hours, and we also track the results based on this support system, and then we kind of cross-analyze it. And after a certain amount of time, we kind of know what kind of support works and what kind of support does not work. And, after that, we kind of have a kind of approach, or how you could say like playbook on growing these early stage companies in a way. So for Sante Accelerator in Myanmar and for Chennai, we are just mobilizing these resource and experience of post-investment support into growing these companies in our accelerator program. And like I mentioned, we have been being investors, and we are a very closely knitted team working together for almost a decade now. So we have a very and again, for our portfolio company, we brought in a lot of co-investors from the region, Asia Pacific, and also from Southeast Asian investors too. So we have a good connection with investors in the region. So when we recommend or make referral to all of these investors about one of our alumni companies in our accelerator program, they kind of take it seriously and listen to the entrepreneurs. And because coming from the investment background, we kind of, have the experience of sitting at the both side of the table, right? We understand what investors are looking for. At the same time, we kind of make, the conversation to be realistic and productive as much as we can. Like, for example, some of the entrepreneurs will be looking for some kind of very optimistic valuation, for example, when the company is in a relatively earlier stage. And then, because coming from investment background, we know how investors think. And then we kind of make it kind of put a, realization in the both side of the table. And at the same time, for the entrepreneurs, investors will come in, and sometimes, the expectations will not be aligned. And then we kind of be able to facilitate it so that the investment readiness really come at play. Like at the end of the day, investment readiness means it's really working only when you get the investment, right? So anyways, the kind of the network of entrepreneurs and being from the investment background helps a lot in kind of improving the business in a realistic way, and putting the expectations aligned and making that beneficial for both sides of the table.
I saw your hand, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just wanted to kind of reiterate that point, because what Lavud mentioned hits the nail on the head, right? Entrepreneurs who are supported by programs run by investors or ex-entrepreneurs themselves have a higher chance of being able to get the right kind of support, rather than organizations that are well-intentioned and are coming through this from an impact perspective, but are looking at it more from the program management perspective or more academic. I cannot tell you how much what Lavon mentioned resonated. I literally had goosebumps thinking, finally somebody says it.
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurs also need to realize this. As investors ourselves, as Chennai and as EME and SeedStars, when we do put in a referral to other investors, it's at the end of the day, and I know it's a bad word right now, but it's still an old boys club, right? And referrals carry a lot of value. So the word travels much more easier when a referral is put in from EME to a fund or SeedStars to a fund, saying, hey, by the way, we've looked at it, we think it's interesting, you should explore it as well. Because for them, they understand that we all do similar kind of due diligence. So it reduces their risk profile if they have to look at a certain entrepreneur. At the same time, to an entrepreneur, we can take the hard stance and saying, hey, by the way, your valuation or the way you're building a business model, we wouldn't invest in it. Why would you think somebody else would? So we can actually take that hardline stance with this when we do it. So I think I just wanted to reiterate that point. I know we're running short of time, but that's a very key aspect to think about it, because at the end of the day, as much as support we can give, if investors don't put private capital into a business, it's very hard for it to succeed. So post-program investment potential is paramount to consider, not just the program support that's given by accelerators. For me, that's what makes the most sense. And thank you, Lavon, for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the power when you do have those connections and come at it with that lens, like you said, that the power of the introduction that you can make when we're thinking about women, I mean, that can close gaps like nothing else, right? So that's great to hear. So okay, so we got two questions, and I think these are a perfect way to end the conversation. The first is one I'll share with both of you, and the last one is one I'll address myself. But I love this question. It's, how are you iterating on your programs? Like, how, like, sure, I mean, you're entrepreneurial, right? So like, how are you trying to improve? Like, what's a way that you're trying to experiment or change or get better? And keeping in mind we have 2 minutes, so we'll have to keep it brief, unfortunately. But Tom, why don't we start with you?
Integration of technology and AI. That's the way we're evolving. So we want to reach more high growth potential startups. As Lavon rightly mentioned earlier as well, we want to make sure that the program is customized based on the needs of the participants. So we cannot go on saying, hey, we have a 10-month program, these are the modules, so on and so forth. We're now working on creating a program that can be run for 2,000 entrepreneurs, but with the same level of due diligence, the same level of support that we can give by leveraging AI. So for us, AI is a game changer. And a way of iterating ourselves is constantly asking our participants to tell us very quickly what works, what does not. And we have to also remember, every enterprise teaches us a new thing. We factor those in, and that's how we build.
As you learn, keep us in the loop. I would love to learn how that goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, like after 2 years, right, when we look back at how the programs went, one thing that strikes us is that, we could not spend as much time as we want at the early stage of the process accelerator program with one-to-one to each entrepreneurs. So sometimes, like, and at the end, we could only support closely to a certain amount of entrepreneurs, right? We select 20 and then we select 7 out of 20. So at the 20 company stage, we couldn't spend as much time sitting one-to-one, learning more about their passion, their vision, and how we could kind of, be a sounding board of, the unit economics, for example, the growth potential, and the financials. So what we're planning for this year is to be try to be having that kind of one-to-one session with each of the entrepreneurs before we even select to the next stage. And that's beneficial for the entrepreneurs, because especially for the emerging markets, right? It's quite difficult for them to get direct access to this VC entrepreneurial organization, especially for the VCs. VCs always being like a black box to the outsider. So what we would like to do is make this a commodity, to be able to provide more support to the early stage entrepreneurs. Or look, these are the things, these are the fundamentals. You need to get these things right before you grow the company. And these are the only things that, you need to be aware of, so that you can grow your business in a sustainable way. So like that's what we are trying to do from next year on. We're trying to be spending more time with, even for the idea stage entrepreneurs, to be the sounding board and the, to provide the litmus test on, the sustainability and the potential of each company.
That's wonderful. And we should have a follow-up conversation about that, because that's probably the most common question I get is, how do you like lessen the blow when an entrepreneur doesn't get accepted, right? How do you still provide value? So I would love to learn more about that. I'll just say the last question I wanted to address is like, what are the remaining research gaps, right? And there are several, but the one that I think is most relevant for this conversation is we need more program evaluations, right? Like I said, it was so hard to find that data. So as programs like yours and anyone else who's listening, like if you can just measure your performance outcomes for the men in your program versus the women in your program and try to understand what that gap is and why and how you might address it and share that information publicly, I think the ecosystem is way more forgiving than you might expect. And if you see that there is a gender gap, because we're all facing it, right? And so we want to be like, have that sort of culture of transparency and common, effort toward closing this gap. So happy to have a follow-up conversation with anyone who's interested. So I know we're over time, but Tom Lawoon, thank you so much. I think you have awesome programs, and I really appreciate all of the insights and connections and expertise that you're bringing to women entrepreneurs around the world. And so, yes, and thank you again to IACA and Sasakawa Peace Foundation for doing this report with us. And we'll follow up with more information, especially when the report is ready for you all to dive in more deeply. So thank you all so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank
much,
you,
Abby.
Abby. Thank you, Tom,
Thanks,
and
Abby.
everyone. Yes.
Bye-bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.